works. Guys ready? Alrighty then. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to LayerOne. We are introducing ourselves because we're introducing ourselves. I am Matt Hoy. This is John Stauffacher. We are doing a talk on are you a janitor or a cleaner? So basically, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good evening, guys. My name is John Stauffacher. I'm obviously a security professional. Been in this industry for about, let's see, but 13 years now. All right. About 13 years. I'm a CISSP. I've been a consultant for probably the last 8. This talk kind of came about with Matt and I as a combination of things that we've seen throughout the years, things that we've experienced our own selves, and how we can give back to the community to kind of help pull in where we see some weaknesses.
Very good. And I'm Matt Hoy. I play an information security professional. Sometimes I've done this for over 15 years. I have letters and stuff. So why we're here today. Basically, we're here to go ahead and talk about incident response. I'm not going to read my own slide. We all know what's been happening lately. Incident response has actually become much more of a focus due to the fact that there have been a lot of high-profile breaches, and due to these high-profile breaches, it's been amazing to go ahead and see what has been happening as far as the response from we're going to pen test everything and not do anything with pen testing versus, okay, we actually have to go ahead and do something. So our talk, we're going to go ahead and talk about in InfoSec where we have gone ahead and failed and how we're going to go ahead and move forward. A quote to go ahead and take a look at. It's the biggest problem we have within our security industry today. It's the way we've always done things. Or you can take Einstein's insanity is repeating insanity, the same thing, whatever. So what we're here to go ahead and speak about today is, are you a janitor when you deal with incident response? Those are the people that are very content to go ahead and we'll just reimage the box, move on. It didn't really happen. So just incident. Or are you a cleaner? So basically you go beyond reimaging the own boxes. You actually want to identify your root cause. You actually want to identify your attacker. Know your attacker's capability and actually stop them from coming back. And this is basically something that isn't usually done in incident response. Usually all we do is stop the bleeding, and that's all we do, and then we can go ahead and move on. Which one are you going to be? The SANS incident response life cycle basically is a pick-and-roll model. It's preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovering, lessons learned. Basically, it's supposed to be equivalent to a security development life cycle, which is you're always preparing. It starts with the preparation. You keep going around. You identify, you contain it, you remove it, you do the recovery, you do the lessons learned, which is post-mortem, and then take the lessons learned, and then you go ahead and go back and re-roll and prepare again for your attacker. The problem is the attacks actually don't have a life cycle, and we're not doing this. At least we're not going ahead and playing with the security development life cycle, and most businesses just simply can't keep up with it. They're always going to go ahead and go, well, an incident is occurring, we need to go ahead and deal with it. once again, most businesses won't go ahead and take a look at what their actual business goals are. Am I going to go ahead and deal with the attack, or am I going to go ahead and continue to suck at security, as people would say? And with that, I will go ahead and give you John Stauffacher for preparation.
Thank you, Matt. I'm going to try to move this. Is that better, everybody? Let's jump into preparation. How are we preparing for an incident, or are we preparing? Currently today within our companies, we talk about preparedness. We talk about doing things the right way. We talk about security. But what are we really doing? It's a lot to read, but we got to look at how we build complex systems. We can't start out one day and say, hey, I want to build the world's best document retention system. That's not how we operate. We start out saying, I want to build something small. You build upon that to get something bigger. No large system is ever going to be created with someone just walking out the door and saying, I want to build the biggest whatever, right? I mean, Ford didn't start out building semi-trucks. It can't happen that way. And what we have today is we have complex systems that are all built upon smaller systems. Smaller little idiosyncrasies that we just built upon to make them bigger and bigger. With all that complexity comes the idea that we can have problems within it. We can have vulnerabilities within it. We keep building on top of stuff, and we produce problems with just in the complexity alone. So what is not working within information security today? What is not working with the way we're doing stuff? Here's a short list. And it kind of sums up where we're at. We don't really understand who our enemy is. We don't understand who's going to attack us. Is it a nation state? Is it a customer who's upset with what we do? Is it someone who's trying to land an attack for a bigger gain? Last year we saw a lot of attacks on customers that were leading up to a bigger one. They weren't going after that customer, rather a customer of theirs, but they had to make that inroad somewhere. We don't really understand the nature and why stuff is happening. When we don't take time to educate our end users, our developers, about what security is. How many in this room, as a security member, have taken your developers aside and really kind of educated them on secure development? We're good at pointing out, hey, there's something wrong over there. But when we have to take that lessons learned step and we walk back and we say, okay, we had an issue, we need to go educate our people, we fail right there. And it's not really a fault of our own. Usually it's business, right? They want to just move on. You know, get over that one issue, let's move on, let's live another day, let's sell another product. We need to stop that mentality, take a step back, and understand what just happened and how we can make sure it really doesn't happen again. We are we have perfected Molcop security. I love this one. It's the observe and report, right? We have IDS, IPS systems that we have now turned on into the famous monitor mode. Because we have the idea that, hey, we won't stop the business from happening, but hey, when something pops up, we'll check the logs, we'll act on it. How many do that? Come on, raise your hands.
This is why we can't have nice things.
It is exactly why we can't have nice things. IPS systems set to monitor mode become IDS systems, and they become lost in a deluge of other logs that you don't read. WAFs become absolutely useless if you don't have them actually doing anything. Firewalls become useless when you're only logging attacks and you're not dropping packets. I know, the business complains, hey, we don't want to drop any real good customers. Why? How many potential customers are you going to lose to make up for the cost of a potential breach, right? This is the equation you have to do. How many customers does it take that we deny before it equals the cost if we do get breached? Someone should go ask eBay that right now. Target, right? How many customers? What is that equation? How does it work for your industry? Staffing is a huge issue as well. We are inadequately staffed. We really don't understand how to hire a security person. What should their job be? We have an idea of what we would want them to be, but usually that job is a job of 4 to 5 people, not one person. And we want to pay them half of what we really should be paying them. What does that lead to? We have people in positions that are overtaxed. they're overworked, they can't have the time to dedicate to what they should be doing, and they face all the brunt of the industry, of the corporation itself when stuff goes wrong. Who wants to be that guy? Do you want to be that guy? Do you want to be the guy who has to sit there and take it from everybody when something happens because he had 200 things to do in a day and couldn't get to that one? It's not fair, but it's something as an industry we have supported because we don't go back to the business and tell them we can't. We can't keep doing this. The other corollary to that is we let the business drive too much. How many people in here have ever had business tell them to do something that they knew they shouldn't be doing? You know, we have this mentality that the product should go out. Whether it's tested or not, whether it's secure or not, it needs to go out because marketing set a date and it needs to go out on that date. We don't push back enough. We don't push back to the business and say the real risk involved in pushing it out before it's time. And then finally, we don't actually know how to respond to an incident. We have an idea of how to, inside our own group, respond, but how do we respond to the public? How do we respond to the people, our customers, when we have an incident? Do we throw a sale like one of the companies did? Offer everybody 10% off because we just got breached? Please, give me more of your credit card information. Do we announce it to everybody and then a day later announce that we have 7 more vulnerabilities that we knew about for the last month, and one includes a shell on one of our sites because now that you've gone back and changed your passwords, they have those now too. These are all situations that have happened and people not really thinking about how they're going to do it, they just go off and do it. So let's go look at our enemy. Who is our enemy? Most of the organized business units now conduct their nefarious activities almost like a business not unlike yourself. They have everything from an HR department to a recruiting center. They have DevOps. You ever notice how quickly these malware turn around and we can trick out antiviruses with different strains? They develop on within days, not weeks, not months. They can push out new product within hours. They have an accounting department. They need to be able to recruit their independent contractors and pay them. They've found an easy way to get people paid, right? Bitcoin, mules, it doesn't matter. They have mastered the art of working for a single vision. They are a company, they are a corporation. If we could only instill those values inside our corporations, we could probably make twice as much of what we're doing today. Fact is, they have a single goal and they all work towards it. You step out of line in there and they just leave you in the dust. Here's some of the interesting jobs they have. If you can think about any of these, from RBN down to any of the other malware networks, they have the same setup. You have a marketing department. They have to be able to sell their wares. They have to be able to list these vulnerabilities or list the stuff that they have sold, the credit cards, whatever you name, the PII, they have to be able to sell it. They need a marketing department. They need to be able to sell their wares. They have an operations department. They need to keep their nefarious agents out there working. They need to be able to support systems internally to have them do their job and get remunerated for it. They have a development environment. They have people who are constantly modifying these things to give out to their guys in the field. They have an accounting department to keep track of how much money they're raking in and how much money they have to sell out. And then they have an HR department responsible for recruiting new talent. They are streamlined, they are efficient, they have laser focus. The reasons they own you is because they are working on a goal. They are all connected and working towards that one goal. Oh, sorry, do you want me back up? Yeah. All right. I have these in a PowerPoint deck I can send you.
In fact, we will post them.
We will. So let's go look at the nature of an attack. Anybody recognize this? Raise your hand if you do. Yeah? Do you know what it is? Is Vis in the room? Because I might owe him $10 if I say this. So this was Lockheed Martin's kind of breakdown of an attack. It's called the cyber kill chain. Great. Thank you. That's what I was waiting for. This is the analysis of an attack, how an attack starts and where it ends. And the higher up the chain you can stop the attack, the more successful you will be. Obviously, if you can stop an attack in the reconnaissance phase, you have no issue at all. But most of us are woefully, we're not even getting here. Usually we find them when they've already set up their command and control. We're done. They probably already have what they came for. They're gone. What have we done?
Giving out coupons.
We literally are. We're giving up coupons. You can come to the party later. What's that?
We told all our users to change their passwords.
Were you the only one besides me who thought that was a great watering hole attack? You get a company to think that they've been breached, they get everybody to change their passwords, that brings everybody back in, and what do you have? You have, 1.45 million new victims. So let's talk about Molotov security. We kind of went into it. I'll give it here, monitor mode. I hate this, because as a consultant, I'm asked to do this all the time. They want to install some new whiz-bang product they just bought, but don't make it actually do anything because we're afraid that it might break something. Well, what is that something it'll break? We don't know. But it'll probably break. You just spent $2 million on a piece of hardware, and now you're telling me to neuter it because you don't know that it might not break something. Thank you. Now, rather than take the couple 100 hours to figure out what to break? No. Just put it in monitor mode. We'll diligently watch the logs, and if something happens, we'll react. Right. It doesn't work that way.
Have you ever suggested that they take out the fire sprinklers?
Nobody.
You got fire alarms. As soon as you hear those go off, you turn on the sprinklers, right?
You laugh, but some of these customers, they have gone so far as to never actually refill their FM 302 tanks. Yeah. Because they figure that's what they have insurance for, right? So if something happens, burn it to the ground, insurance pays us back. These are business drivers influencing security decisions. These are business drivers. What's that? Oh, don't even get me started. Yes. So let's talk about hiring. I love this part of the speech. This actually took pretty recently. For those in the back, if you can't read it, you might want to come to the front. This is kind of interesting what we're asking of this person to do in their daily job. All right? It seems a lot of work to do, but remember, this is for a gaming company. This was a casino. So you're sitting around, billions of dollars each day changing hands, lots of regulation. We're going to hire one guy, and this is what he's going to do. All these things. And check Facebook and Craigslist and his email. All right? Here's what we want him to know how to do. Granted, this job is for probably about $65,000 a year. But this isn't just one. I could go through hundreds of these. Many of you in your own companies probably have the same things because we're not thinking about who we want. We're just saying, hey, we're going to throw this big list of stuff out and get a rock star. A rock star won't do half of this for $65,000. I would pass. Especially in the gaming industry where you're heavily regulated. That means this guy is putting his job on the line every time his manager asks him to do something stupid. And he has to say, yes, sir.
Are you serious, dude?
It's what it comes down to. I mean, literally, I picked this up probably less than a week ago. Too often we let the business drive. Here we're letting the product drive. These are actually posters I found online from companies that want to sell motivational things to startups. Because these are things that they think startups like. The idea of, fuck it, ship it. We don't care. Or I love this one. Done is better than perfect. The win in security is done better than perfect.
Checkbox.
The longer it takes to develop, the less likely it is to launch. I love that one. I've actually had a program manager in an SDLC meeting tell me this straight to my face because she didn't want to go through security testing. She said, the longer it takes, it just won't launch. People won't like it. People don't like it when you have a breach. People don't like it when their personal information is exposed to the world. People don't like changing their bank accounts because you couldn't figure out how to do SDLC correctly. I can tell you the damage done by this thinking far outweighs the damage done for your product being delayed. With that politics drive, I hear this one all the time. These quotes are actually taken from customers of mine that were said to me when we were working through various stuff. And I'm sure many of you have heard these day in and day out. We can't let them do this. We can't sit here and say, yeah, man, I can't scan the server because it may crash. Well, then we have another issue to fix before we even start talking about security, is why are we putting ourselves in this position? Why are we putting the business in jeopardy every time we try to do something proactive? The last one I love too, this is one of my favorite. I only open tickets I know I can close. This was an engineer who was run by a manager who believed in efficiency. They figured efficiency was measured in tickets open, tickets closed, and average time to resolution. And this is what that thinking gets you. It gets engineers who aren't thinking with their security hat. They're thinking about, hey man, my boss is going to yell at me if it takes longer than a day and a half to close this ticket, so I'm just going to close it or I'm not going to open it.
It's not just it might crash, we don't want to be responsible. It's not just we can't scan it. Sometimes we can't patch it.
Well, let's put it this way. Do you think the attacker is bound by these rules? Do you think the guy out there who's looking to own you is bound by any of these rules? Does he have to go through change control to ask permission to run Nmap against your box?
Well, look at the upside. I mean, he's never going to hack it because it's
Yes, exactly.
after that.
But it probably won't at one time.
Here's a great one. We all love Dilbert. It's a little bit of read to read, but Dilbert gets asked to install his company's firewall, and he explains that everybody blames everything on the firewall, so he doesn't want to do it. And at the end of it, yeah, they're blaming the firewall. This is what happens. This is politics driving business decisions. You don't want to do something because everybody blames security when shit doesn't work. Even when it has nothing to do with security, right? Nothing to do with firewall. So we stop doing what's proactive because we don't want to be held responsible for what might happen. So now we go into we don't know how to respond, and these kind of go between and go with each other. University of Maryland. This is an awesome one. This is how they responded, and I don't know if you can read this in the back, but their response was basically, well, it happens to other people, so it must be a trend happening. Breaches are not a trend. It happened to the guy next door, so it must be okay is not a response to give to people. In fact, this actually happened twice to them, and it was only after the second breach that they actually fixed the problem. But their response is still, it shocked me when I read that. It's like, well, you know, it happens to everybody, so it must be a problem, and we just got swept up in it. No, it didn't. You didn't get swept up in it. You didn't do what you were supposed to do, so rather than take responsibility for it, you want to tell the public that it's okay because it happens to everybody else. Here's two medical instances, and anybody find the irony on this page? The symbol there, which is commonly associated with medical people, is actually the staff of Hermes. A little joke inside the medical community is there was an army unit that actually adopted that as its symbol, and so the medical facility followed. Whereas the actual symbol for medicine, the god of medicine in Greek mythology, is a staff with one snake, not two. And it's kind of the thinking they had here. Palomar Health, who got breached, they decided, hey, we're positively sure that your health information hasn't been used for any nefarious purposes whatsoever, even though they had an employee who lost 2 unencrypted USB sticks with over 20,000 patient records on them. This one, same thing. Franciscan Medical Group, another lost laptop with 35,000 patient information. But hey, we're sure that it wasn't used in any way possible bad at all. We're 100% risky free. My question is, what is a single user doing with that many patient records unencrypted on a USB stick or even in their laptop, leaving it in their car? Why are we not doing our job to make sure that that doesn't happen? And why are we responding to a breach with saying, hey, we know for uncertain doubt, or no shadow of a doubt, that your information has been, we can't make those assertions. Those assertions are not something we can quantify. We don't know. For all we know, they could be using it right now. Customers come to us to look for the truth. They come to us for reassurance that they're okay. And giving them false information like this is not something that we want to start supporting. The IRS. This happened just recently, and the interesting thing was this was a case where an employee took a laptop home and had 20,000 records of IRS employee data on it that got swiped from their car. And this was their response. Again, they're coming back and saying, hey, they have no evidence that it's ever been used for any nefarious purposes. Why is an employee carrying around 20,000 records of its own employees on a laptop sitting in the front seat of the car? This is just the tip of the iceberg, right? What's that? All right. Well, got it. Wow. I know. They're not the poster child for doing things the correct way, but you realize that these people have all of our personal information. They are custodians for every single citizen's social security number and banking information going back for as long as we've been working. So if they can't figure out how to handle data responsibly, why should we be okay with them telling us, hey, we have no evidence to indicate that it's ever been used improperly, right? Maricopa Community College District. After 9 months, they still hadn't remediated themselves. They were stuck in a politic war with an IT director who was moving out and no one wanted to pick up this baby as it was. They didn't remediate. They figured, we got breached once, wipe the box, reinstall it as it was, put it back into service, don't patch it. And it kept going on and on and on. The last one, my favorite one. We're in this together. In that spirit, we are extending a 10% discount. We let go of all your financial information, but hey, we'll give you 10% off and come back to our stores and run your credit cards again, because we're not even sure if we know how we got breached, right? I think this is the most awesome of responses to something without taking any responsibility for what they've done. We all in the room know here what happened, how it happened. So to understand that, and to hear their response here, it's kind of insulting, knowing that they played fast and loose with their security controls, and at the end of it, they thought, wait, hey, let's capitalize on this. Let's throw a sale. Let's get people back into our stores. So let's talk about change. How are we going to do this? Anybody read Buckminster Fuller? It's actually got some great books like Spaceship Earth. You know, the idea is that change isn't going to come without breaking what we consider normal, without breaking the trends, developing something that people have to move to make it the new version and get rid of the old. So DB Networks did a study along with the Ponemon Institute. 65% of the customers they have surveyed had a SQL injection attack. Okay. Took 148 days to detect, 68 days to remediate, 208 days total. That is 2/3 of a year you spent owned before you did anything about it. Let that sink in for a minute. 208 days. That's 208 days with a security admin punching in each day, reading through logs, doing his daily duties, all the while your information is being pilfered out the back door. For something that's as easily preventable, something that's within all of our purview to do. It's within our own job description to prevent. And on average, it's taking us 208 days to fix it. So how do we fix this? Let's start following the money. Business people, executives, your management, they understand dollars, they don't understand hyperbole. They don't get this technical stuff, they don't get computers, they get dollars, they get cents, they get return on investment. How much money am I going to spend and what is it going to save me? We are good in the tech industry of talking hyperbole. We can go, oh my God, APT. The executives, they don't understand APT. They're like, well, what? I don't get it. They know letters, they can kind of read, but they don't get APT, and we don't get finance. We don't talk dollars and cents. We can't come down with a story. There's a reason why marketing gets to throw a $200,000 party, and I can't buy a firewall. Marketing is great at telling a story. That's what they do. We don't tell stories, and that's what we need to do. We need to start telling stories. We need to start attaching monetary values to what happens. Stop being defensive like it's something that we did wrong. You can't blame a guy who couldn't defend against an attack because you cut his budget by 75% and he can't afford to buy anything. Or you're hiring people who, you could have hired 4 for that job and they're overworked, underpaid, and getting burnt out. You can't fault that. We got to stop being defensive over this stuff and start accepting the fact that we need to tell a story, we need to get the funding, we need to be like marketing. No, let's not do that. Believe me, this is a stretch for me. So it's kind of simple. Cost of the solution versus cost of an adverse event versus the cost of doing nothing, because there's always a cost at doing nothing. People think that doing nothing is free, but generally doing nothing always costs you a lot more than doing something. So Symantec, I know what you're going to say, and Ponemon, they got together and they actually created this cool little website called databreachcalculator.com. It's pretty awesome at making this story happen. You do a survey, you fill out its questions, it comes back with you with numbers. Numbers that you can put into an email, send over to your boss and say, look, according to Symantec, this is what it would cost if we got breached. Everybody loves stuff. I mean, the only thing better was if Gartner was involved. If Gartner was involved, they would write you a check right away. It's not too far off base, though, and that's the scary part. The survey they have you fill out, the questions they ask you are on point, they're within reason, and the numbers you get are pretty damn near what reality would be. Use it to your advantage. Use this in your storytelling. Create your story. Can we stop calling them advanced? If everything is an advanced persistent threat, thank you, then is anything an advanced persistent threat? And if they are so advanced 4 years after that term was created, why are we not gotten as advanced as they are? Shouldn't they just be persistent threats? Or should they just be normal day of life, it's going to happen? We can't go about attacking these things the way we always have. It's not working. It didn't work 4 years ago, it still doesn't work today. Sandboxing doesn't work because sandboxing only applies to the sandbox they have, correct? If FireEye doesn't have an image for whatever you're looking at, it's not going to detect the threat. The stuff we're doing today is the same stuff we did 20 years ago. Antivirus hasn't changed much. According to Symantec, I think it's dead now. Is that? Yeah, isn't endpoint dead? Long live endpoint? We need to start doing things differently. We need to start identifying who our attackers are, going after them, and stopping it at its source.
But this is the way we've always done it.
Thank you. See, he's tying back into what...
We learned.
Hey, we're already starting. The other thing we've noticed is that people are not remediating today. We don't have time to take in remediation. Business wants us to get everything back to normal as soon as possible and just get back with our daily jobs. Remember, the job description we saw, he had about, 50 different tasks they want him to do daily? Everything from write policy down to install new hardware, because we can all do that in a day. Remediation has fallen off the board, and we need to get back to doing it. We need to figure out what happened, fix it, and then go through that lessons learned portion of it where we understand how we can be better. I'll let this one sink in for a bit. Because when you kind of understand what he's saying here, you're going to realize that for as much as we invest in security, we're still getting beat by the cheapest thing they can find on the bottom of the cutting room floor to attack you with. Again, these are businesses. They want to buy low and sell high. They don't want to invest too much money in the game if they can't get any return on investment. The last batch of Target cards sold for a whopping 35 cents a card. But at their height, they were going for $15.33 a card. If you calculate how many cards they had, they made a bundle of money off it, but it's still a business. They still got to control cost, and they still want to profit. So if we're being beat by whatever they can scrounge up out of our couch cushions, they're not taking it out of their bankroll. They're not going to go spend $10,000 for the latest IE8 0 day. No, they'll go for an MS08 64 because we're all still vulnerable to it. 4 years later. So let's start working harder because we're already smarter. Everybody tells me that work smarter, not harder. I think in our industry the problem is we've worked really smart. We just forgot how to work hard. We don't know where the attack come from. We don't know what the attacker used, and we don't know who's behind the attack. But we can tell you all about what's happened on Reddit and NetSec. We spend our days learning about stuff. We spend our days practicing. But when it comes to the dance, we fall on our feet because we're not used to it, and we're not given the latitude we can to do what we need to do to protect ourselves. We're kind of put in this little box where business doesn't want us to do anything that's going to ruffle anyone's feathers. Security is everybody's job. If you have someone inside your industry or inside your company who is not taking security the way it should, that should be a vulnerability in itself. If you've got a guy on your team who is sitting there downloading every free app he can onto his work PC and load up with every Trojan, he should be dealt with as we deal with any vulnerability, because they're creating work for the security department that is being pushed off and other work cannot be done. Like those attackers, if we're not aligned in a single goal, if we're not aligned in our business goal or our security goals, we can't operate efficiently. And if we're having to waste our time going after people who just don't get it, we need to document that as a vulnerability in itself. We need to get serious about hiring. Dude, I'd always hire a stormtrooper if I could, except they can't shoot worth beans. So let's put the I back in team. It's there. I can tell you, it's right there. And you see how it makes up? Right there, see? We can still be individuals but work as part of a team. We can still be a part of the security community and work in these teams of developers and whoever we're working with. But we need to maintain that position of being right in the middle. The word team doesn't get held up with that I without it being there. You can still be an individual. You can still be firm in what you believe in. You can still be firm in the concepts you have and not yielding, but still be a part of the team. Educate. Help them understand what your position is and where your values lie, what your responsibilities are. Just like them, you have responsibilities. A lot of times we don't explain this. We don't explain to people why we make the decisions we make. We just say no. It doesn't work that way. People feel that it's abrasive. It comes off defensive. They don't understand why you're saying no. Open up the kimono. Let them know what your secret sauce is. And be that I in the word team. And lastly, as I leave here and turn this over to Matt, we got to start fighting back.
Thank you, John. So we see that John has been able to go ahead and illustrate many things as to why things are happening. I'm actually going to go back to actually looking at the anatomy of attack. We're going to actually go ahead and pretty much go back to the beginning. So we are actually not doing the preparation, but the enemy is. Basically, your attacker on your infrastructure, they have no rules. They don't need change management to go ahead and run any scanning tools. If they crash the server, well, they crash the server. We're probably not going to detect it. They definitely don't use checkbox settings in their tools, and they don't have any rules. So if you go ahead and take a look at what I was speaking about earlier, the preparation and now identification, what isn't working for identification? We simply go ahead and buy things that say that I'm going to alert you if something's going on that we need to know about. Apparently, alerting isn't good enough alone, because if you look back at the store that gave 10% off, there were 40,000 alerts. If 40,000 alerts, basically, yes, a day. I was going to leave it at 40,000, but if 40,000 alerts don't wake you up, then what is? We take all this technology that we buy, we go ahead and set it and forget it, and At the very worst, we don't have an escalation process that's worth anything, because at 40,000 alerts, shouldn't have that been escalated to someone who actually would have said, this is bad? You think. So you take a look at this and it's like, how do we usually find out that there was a breach? Krebs? Hi, this is a 3-letter agency. Yeah, we found a password dump and you're in it. And we logged in. And this is what I've heard the last 3 times. Literally, well, we can't talk about it, but the authorities contacted us. And apparently we had an FTP server. And that FTP server, yeah, it didn't have a choke point or anything, but they had root. Alrighty then.
But the IDS logged it, right?
Yes.
Yes, it did, and they did capture the traffic.
And the IPS would have responded, but it was in monitor mode.
Another fun one. Why isn't the email working? Why are we blacklisted? Oh, nah. We only sent enough Nigerian spam to go ahead and cover about the US 3 times. Or, worst case scenario, yeah, if you see pastebin, Krebs probably already got you on that. So basically what we failed to go ahead and do is we have never ever caught an attacker in action. If we have, what would you do? Things that I go ahead and do when I've seen attacks, if I'm lucky enough to be able to catch it and it's active, is I need to know what the level of skill that my opponent has. Is it a direct or an indirect method? If I can go ahead and do this and I have the time, and you always have the time, you should be pretty much doing a formulation on your attacker. They're always going to leave behind at least, the very least, an IP address. If you're lucky, they have an OS fingerprint. What we've gone ahead and failed to go ahead and do is go ahead and in the preparation phase, actually take a look at our real physical assets and do some classification. People do not know the actual value of what it is that they're going ahead and trying to protect. So let's go ahead and install a new SIEM. It's going to be awesome. It's going to solve all our problems. Let's feed it everything. 40,000 alerts on garbage. Gets you garbage. So basically, another thing that we failed to do is identify the actual pivot points. When you're taught to go ahead and do penetration attacks, there are things that you need to go ahead and do. One, you need to go ahead and gain connectivity. The next thing you're going to do is, where can I get to the good stuff? And how many times do I have to go ahead and do it? So depending on the actual pivot and whatnot, you'll be able to go ahead and see the actual skill, and it won't be an APT.
Drink.
So tools that I use to go ahead and identify people. I believe that you have the capability in your organization to go ahead and map things out. If your enemy doesn't have change management and everything else, why should you? If I have an IP address, the first thing I go ahead and do is tear it apart, figure out everything I can about the actual attacker. I need to know how big is this CIDR block. I need to know how big this guy is. A lot of people will actually go ahead and look through their logs and only look at a single IP and going, oh, well, I found the attacker. They don't actually realize how big the guy is. So why not go ahead and scan your enemy? Why not go ahead and take a look and look at what the enemy does? People don't. They usually just go, 40,000 alerts. All right, what do I do with it? Things that I actually use for things, if I can't actually identify where the actual IPs are, a tap is cheap. You can actually go ahead and throw in Bro IDS or anything else in there just to go ahead and figure out what the heck's going on. And I can't emphasize this enough. A lot of people don't do things the old school way and don't use pen and paper, but they get smart and they decide that I'm going to go ahead and shortcut things. I'm going to take my cell phone. I'm going to just take pictures of everything. That becomes evidence, and you actually might lose your asset for whatever long that that takes to go ahead and go through chain of custody and whatnot.
Moral of the story, during an incident, don't take pictures of anything with your own cell phone.
Or your companies,
Yeah.
for that part.
That's how I track my passwords.
But do you stick
Funny,
it on
that's
the
how I track
monitor?
your passwords too.
Because I upload it to Google and I can look at it online, right? Yeah.
Alrighty then. So containment. When you have been breached, let's go ahead and just unplug the machine. And even worse, let's go ahead and, this isn't an actual desktop machine. This is in production. Even better idea. Well, we have that DR site, right? It totally hasn't been patched for 90 days, but it works. Let's go ahead and subject that to them, because if we weren't patched before, we're definitely not patched in the hot DR swap site. So even more things for your attacker to go ahead and play with. But
Yeah.
while we're going ahead and doing that, we'll go ahead and reimage the box and just put it back up.
Chances are if your production site got owned, your DR site will get owned just as fast.
Or faster, because you're going to have 2 times, 3 times the vulnerabilities.
That, you're not running client database, or client code in your test instances.
Oh, no, we wouldn't do that.
Would never have client data.
And our DR, it wouldn't be pre-prod. It wouldn't be pre-prod. No.
Connecting to the same database as your, for test as well as.
That's outright.
I only
That is
test my
fucking
code.
outright though. I only test my code in product.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Prod's where I do my development.
I don't usually test my code, but when I do, it's in product.
Awesome. So, a lot of people don't actually go ahead and flush out their attacker. When people get phishing emails, what do they do with it? They usually throw them away. I actually want them. Reason why I want them is if I'm running an app, I might be lucky enough to have app logs that can actually go ahead and reveal my attacker. At the very least, I actually can go ahead and create data that I can go ahead and at least find. So what can I make that's unique even if my developers suck? I can go ahead and make fake usernames that I can identify. I definitely can go ahead and know the hash on the weak password that I used to feed the phisher. All of a sudden I get more IP addresses. I now know what this guy is coming at me with.
The idea is that if you feed an attacker with fake data that you have categorized, you can obviously pin through your SIM and your logs and find that data that you've just given them. You've actually caused them to identify themselves by what you feed them in their own phishing attempt. It's kind of the same reason with password reminders. You know, just because it asks you what your first junior high school was doesn't mean you actually have to answer it truthfully. You just need to know what the answer is. In this case, you just need to feed the enemy in a token that you can use to identify them with later when they try to use your services.
But more importantly, when I actually go ahead and feed this information, what you can actually do is you can go ahead and you can actually feed it in slow. And I can do these one at a time at the speed of what I can do human-wise. Or I can actually go ahead and write a script to go ahead and flood my attacker and see if that flood actually comes back. Am I dealing with a human behind the keyboard, or am I dealing with a bot that's actually just going to go ahead and send it right back to me? You need to know, is this a human or is this automated? If it's automated, usually it's easy enough to take down.
Unless your attacker is a Korean StarCraft player, they do not type at the speed of light. If you're getting responses back as soon as you send them, chances are you're either dealing with a bot or a Korean StarCraft player.
Wow.
No, the Korean StarCraft player would actually give you the responses before you type.
Oh, I can't see their hands.
Yeah, that's probably true. So basically, in assessing the attacker's capability, after I've gleaned all these things about the attackers, I can obviously take all the IP addresses and then go ahead and look at the CIDR block capabilities. Are they actually using slashes, or are they using one-offs? Attackers have gotten a lot better in the fact that they know that everybody does geo IP location. I've actually known people to actually go ahead and set up an attack based in the same data center under the same CIDR block that you're under, so it actually looks like the spammer is actually sending from a legitimate forged header, because I'm in the same IP range as you are. So are they smart enough to go ahead and do that? That's when I go ahead and do some OSINT. Don't be afraid to go ahead and start ripping your attacker apart. They're definitely doing it to you, and it doesn't take any time at all. So once again, go ahead and scan them. Feel free to go ahead and get direct with your attacker after you go ahead and identify them. It's kind of funny to go ahead and, if all else fails, when I finally actually know where they came from, send them an email. Would you kindly go ahead and knock it off? It can happen. Or you can go ahead and deal with the ISP or provider. Funny thing is I went ahead and I made a call to this guy, and I said, hey, address range.
Can't hear you.
Mic antenna.
It went out. Anyways, I identified and provided logs for the ISP, and they said, oh, that guy, well, he pays too much, we can't do anything for that. And ISP told me, we're not going to take any action against this user, period, because he pays too much. So, basically, what did I do? Fine, /24. Bye-bye.
Hypothetically.
So, the difficulty is this guy actually had the intestinal fortitude to go ahead and call back my company and actually ask me to unblock his entire IP and say, but we're cool now, right? I said, did you get rid of the customer? No, he's still my customer. Then no. You don't get access. So other things that can be fun is I had another incident where there was some intellectual property that was supposedly leaked. We were provided a single website, and oh my God, there's a poster to a movie that hasn't even been out yet. We went ahead and actually found the watermark to the image, compared it against the one that we knew that was good, and after we knew that it wasn't ours and it didn't leak from us, game was on. So went ahead and found that this guy posted to many different forums, and forums kind of leak IP addresses, and yeah, he had a nice letter coming to him. So, and he used the same email address he always used for every forum, so it's not that hard to find him. The best part is actually finding his home IP address after we directly emailed him saying, yeah, that was really cool, and he wrote me back from his house. And then I actually had a picture of his house from Spokio.
Here's the thing that should resonate in all your minds. These are the people that are getting past us. These are the people that are getting past all the security training that we have all had, because they are not bound by what we're bound by. They're not bound by these business decisions that are being made. They're not bound by the people around us that we have to work with that don't quite understand what we do. We don't quite understand what they're doing. They are doing stuff like posting their home IP address on a forum saying, hey, look what I stole from you. Obviously, they're not the brightest thinkers, but they're able to get past us, right? Because our IPSs are in learning mode. Our firewalls don't have the appropriate rules because we can't let the application die.
And we have 80,000 alerts instead of 40,000 that we just can't bother to look at. So the last part is lessons learned. Well, if you're doing things differently, you should actually be doing your intelligence gathering, determining your attacker's skill set, understanding the attacker, understanding the motive, usually it's money, and go ahead and not be afraid to go ahead and hit them back, create automated tools. I love Lay's talk on Teacher WAF, new tricks. It was awesome. And basically, feel free to go ahead and use Isnt to learn about similar attackers that could possibly go ahead and do things to you that you should be blocking preemptively before they actually come at you. So we get to the last part in Pickerel, which is lessons learned. Well, usually they take my report, find the circular bin, throw it away, sweep it under the carpet. It doesn't solve the issue. Hopefully, what you'll be doing is going ahead and everything that you went ahead and did as far as learning about your attacker, you're re-rolling and looking for those same trends. You should be able to go ahead and take those same trends, and now you know who's attacking you, and see similar things and make sure that you're actually making things happen.
We can only justify our own existence and justify our own spend and justify our own needs by taking what we've learned in the past, presenting them to management, putting a dollar sign to it.
And with lessons learned, we come to threat intelligence. The best threat intelligence you could possibly deal with is the ones that are happening to you by people knocking on your door 80,000, 40,000, millions of times. Do you really have to pay for it when you get free of it all free every day?
The only threat intelligence that's relevant to your company right now is what is happening to you right now, what's coming out of your own devices. You can buy a feed from anybody you want, but it's not going to be irrelevant until you look at what you have and what you're exposed to and what your machines are telling you right now.
And basically that will go ahead and conclude our talk. Thank you all. Questions?
We only do one part per person.
Well, you know, you can do it too, that's fine.
Oh, wait.
But my first is you mentioned that, you know, maybe find the IP or email the person or something like that. Do you think that's actually a good defensive posture? No.
It's not meant to be a it's not meant to be a defensive posture.
So is your
for me to go ahead and figure out.
Which I understand, but you see, you email somebody, and they know that you're on them, they can go ahead and blast you with whatever else they have.
But aren't they doing that already?
No, actually, usually they're trying to obfuscate their actual attacks.
Sometimes
And
they do.
typically, when you email them or bring it to their attention, they will give you a full-on DDoS or some other not nice. Those are fuzzy bug.
And then again, once again, my experience has been 90% of the time when I've dealt with these people, if I even run an Nmap scan against the IP that went ahead and attacked me,
Sure.
crickets. Nobody's home. Nobody's home.
So think of it this way. Your current response is what? You lay low, you fix your stuff?
No. My current response is lawyers, police departments, and ISPs.
And how's that worked? Have your attacks gone...
It's fairly effective.
But have your attacks been mitigated? Have they gone down in number or increased in number?
But again, my initial question is, how much sense does it make to engage the attacker directly? Right? Does that poke the bear, or does that mitigate the attack?
Well, it goes back to the other part of did you actually do your homework and take a look at the IPs?
Sure.
Because I don't want to go ahead and invoke.
But I'm just saying, the suggestion notion was, go ahead and invoke. Okay, I'm working off that. So I have a problem with that notion.
Sure.
Emailing them and allowing them to know that you're actually visibly monitoring them, because I think that's kind of the way to alert them.
I didn't actually say that I was alerting them. I actually said
Well,
that was cool, so I could get an IP back.
It inferred.
Well,
The
that's
thing
also
I
the
found-
assumption that it's their IP, right? If someone's really
Right.
broken, they're not using that IP.
Right.
Right,
Which is
but
why I said-
I'm actually referring to the intellectual property one,
Sure,
where we knew as a forum.
Sure.
And I just wanted to say,
Okay.
yeah,
Under that context,
this was cool.
under that
Thanks,
context,
dude.
would you not prefer to engage with the legal team?
You've got to understand who your enemy is.
I do.
And that's what it comes down to. Where you
Sad
go
part
after
is
that,
the legal team told me they couldn't do anything unless I identified who actually
So
did that.
if we're speaking under a specific instance and it's your last option, then I understand. I'm just wondering if that was the preferred method of.
They said, we don't know who to send the letter to, so if you can give me that, I will send them the letter.
Your legal team sucks.
a lot of times,
They
And
did.
my other like random kind of more technical question was, I see you guys mentioned Splunk a lot in your talk, maybe twice.
You know, most companies can't.
As far as I saw, but I was wondering if there were any legit alternatives to that.
Yeah, grab and hide.
What's that?
Grab.
You guys looked at like Elasticsearch with Logstash or Kibana?
One session can monitor, pain in the ass.
Yes, they are.
it really comes down to whatever you have as your SIM, whatever you have collecting your data, you need to be able to use it. I've walked into as many ArcSight and Splunk installations that are gaining dust
Even
because,
through radar. they
yeah,
say.
sorry.
Splunk's a great product,
Yeah, for a company with like 6 servers.
but it's expensive.
Oh.
So I was just wondering if there's anything that you tested on your level.
So
I
let,
use Splunk as well.
let me put it to you this way. Would you buy a bulletproof vest that was on sale for 75% off?
However, I would shop around before.
Sure.
Splunk doesn't really do anything that Kibana and Logstash.
It doesn't.
And it's absolutely one-to-one. The only thing
Pretty much
Splunk,
the same.
yeah, well, Splunk is better at importing old data.
Yes.
If you're talking about new data,
Real
We're not
Splunk-
talking about tools here, we're just saying, hey.
Right.
Oh, I'm going back to the bulletproof vest comment. 'Cause Splunk
I'm not
is
selling you
Kibana
any
and Splunk.
tools.
Any SIM you buy provides you intelligence, but that intelligence is only realized when you have the staff who can ingest it, who have the time to act on it, and who understand.
Most companies don't. They're like, here's Splunk.
I mean, that goes back to my staffing issue, is right? We're not providing ourselves with the people we need to run our tools. We want to buy a tool and say, hey, this tool will do whatever we need and secure us, right? Because your WAF,
That's a true point. That's a true point. It's not just people. It's both infrastructure,
So-
it's money, and then people.
my point when people want to equate a dollar sign to their security solution is, would you buy a bulletproof vest made in China with recycled aluminum?
Sure.
What bulletproof vest is made of aluminum?
Well, wait, it depends where you're going, right?
All right, we're cutting into drinking time now.
So, an actual question about this. Yes. I am not unconscious on my face yet. So with regard to, put the eye back in team and.
Like that?
Yeah,
It's in the
well,
angle.
kind
It's in
of.
the angle.
It's in the angle, but, ultimately, the issue that you brought up was, it's, when you tell people no, and not give them any reasons, they don't understand, and they challenge, and most of the time they'll just continue, or they'll just continue a set action, regardless of your no. But when you explain that to them, they all of a sudden say, I don't understand what you just said. How do you find a middle ground?
You've got to work on your own presentation skills. You've got to work on being able to it's all about communication, right? We always get on our jobs. And it goes back to it. You've got to be able to, your job is to secure it, right? You can't just walk away and say, hey man, they didn't understand what I said. Well, maybe you have to bust out the giant crayon and draw it out.
When I said cool, I typed in Containment and their IP address. and I-
Gary's final thoughts here, please. Gary's final thoughts, go. Go. Gary's final thoughts.
I just want.
It's all you as a security person to deliver your message to them and pound on them to understand it. If it involves getting down to their level, speaking their words, figuring out a way for them to understand it. We can't just walk away and say, hey man, I can't deal with these people, they just don't understand. Because that doesn't solve the problem. They win, right? They don't do it. And we get frustrated.
You're working with too many technical issues. guys have